Why does absolutely everything right now, from your morning coffee and a tank of petrol, all the way to your monthly streaming subscriptions, suddenly feel so unbearably expensive? I mean, when we see these numbers jumping up everywhere we look, it's really easy to just point the finger and say, well, it's just corporate greed. But the real answer? It's not quite that simple. What we're actually looking at is a massive, complex, macroeconomic machine that's constantly operating right in the background of our everyday lives. Let's unpack how it actually works.
You've probably experienced this exact feeling recently. You walk into a grocery store with a 500 rupee note, completely expecting to just easily grab a few days' worth of essentials. But then, you walk out with maybe 2 tiny bags and honestly, a severe case of emotional damage. We've all felt that visceral shock right at the checkout line. Your eyes kind of widen at the total, your heartbeat speeds up just a little bit, and you're left standing there wondering how on earth a few basic everyday items could possibly drain your wallet so aggressively.
So what's happening here? Well, it's not necessarily that these physical products are somehow becoming inherently more valuable. It's actually that your currency is suffering from a massive erosion of purchasing power. Think about it. 20 years ago, a 100 rupee note could easily buy you a full, hearty meal, some snacks for later, and a cold drink to wash the whole thing down. And today, that exact same 100 rupee note barely covers a single basic black coffee at a local cafe. The goalposts just keep moving. And this erosion of your purchasing power, it isn't just an isolated issue in one town or one country. It's a systemic reality happening pretty much everywhere around the globe. To really get this, consider a classic economic thought experiment. Picture a deserted island, and on this island, there are exactly 10 pizzas left in total. That's it. That is your absolute fixed supply. Now, imagine a plane flies over and drops huge, heavy stacks of cash down to everyone on the island. Suddenly, everyone feels incredibly rich. But here's the catch. There are still only 10 pizzas. So what happens next? Everyone starts frantically waving their new stacks of cash around, trying to outbid their neighbors just to secure a single slice. And that right there is the textbook definition of demand pull inflation. You've got more money chasing the exact same amount of stuff, because everyone on our imaginary island suddenly has more currency, but the physical supply of those pizzas stayed exactly the same. The person selling them is absolutely, inevitably going to raise their prices. When we zoom out from that little island and look at the real world, this is the exact same fundamental core mechanic that's driving up the cost of everything around us. The first major real-world trigger for this is a sudden, massive explosion in demand colliding head-on with a really rigid supply chain. Think back to the recent pandemic. Almost overnight, millions of people suddenly and desperately needed laptops, webcams, gaming consoles, and completely new home office setups. But factories, they couldn't just magically work twice as fast to overcome their supply chain bottlenecks. It's basic math. When significantly more people want something and there simply isn't enough of it to go around, the market naturally forces those prices straight up. But, it's not just about a crazy explosion in consumer demand. We also have to look at what economists call cost-push inflation. Put yourself in the shoes of a small bakery owner for a second. Out of nowhere, the cost of your flour skyrockets. Your monthly electricity bills jump up. Transporting your ingredients suddenly costs double what it used to. Plus, your hardworking employees, they need higher salaries just to survive these rising costs themselves. As a business owner, you are completely backed into a corner. You either keep your prices exactly the same and actively lose money, or you increase the price of your bread. For most businesses to survive, they simply have to pass that extra cost down to us, the consumers. Which brings us to another huge piece of the puzzle: monetary expansion. Central banks sometimes implement rapid monetary expansion, which is essentially injecting brand new money into the system to prop up the economy, especially during national or global emergencies. Objectively speaking, during severe crises, this kind of quantitative easing can provide absolutely vital liquidity to keep a stalling economy moving forward. But just like we saw on our pizza island, if too much money enters the system too quickly, it completely floods the marketplace. It leaves everyone with more cash chasing the same amount of products, and that can cause prices to just spiral upward. And all of this pressure leads to one of the market's absolute stealthiest tactics. We call it shrinkflation. Instead of risking a full-blown consumer revolt by hiking the actual price tag of an item, companies adapt to their shrinking profit margins by simply reducing the physical quantity of the product inside the packaging, all while making absolutely sure the price you pay at the register remains exactly the same. It perfectly captures the stark and honestly kind of funny reality we face every time we walk down the snack aisle. The price stays at 20 rupees, but the chips inside, poof, gone.
replaced by a bag full of aggressively packaged air. It's such a highly subtle change. Maybe that chocolate bar is just a few grams lighter, or the bag is a tiny bit smaller, so you don't even realize you're actually paying significantly more money for less food. It is a brilliant adaptation by businesses trying to protect their bottom line. But let me tell you, once you know what shrinkflation is, you will literally never be able to unsee it when you're shopping.
So, with absolutely everything costing more, or subtly shrinking in size, why does it feel so incredibly impossible to get ahead? Well, it's because your nominal salary growth is slowly taking the stairs, just inching upwards step by painful step. Meanwhile, the cost of living has hopped right into a high-speed elevator. So even if you are objectively earning a higher numerical salary today than you did last year, the rapid, elevator-like rise in prices means your real wages, your actual, usable purchasing power, is actively declining. And to make matters trickier, our modern environment actively normalizes these higher costs through stealthy premiumization and these constant psychological spending triggers. Things that used to be a very rare treat, like eating out of a restaurant, are now pushed through food delivery apps to feel like an absolute everyday routine. Modern marketers are complete experts at making higher price points feel totally acceptable. They use triggers like slapping the word premium on a box, labeling something a limited edition, or boasting about a new formula just to justify that inflated cost. We are literally constantly tempted to spend. Now, because of heavily globalized supply chains, all of this builds into a rapid domino effect. We don't live in a bubble, right? A sudden spike in oil prices in one hemisphere instantly inflates global freight costs. This means the massive ships, the planes, and the trucks needed to move our goods suddenly cost way more to run, which directly leads to the groceries on your local neighborhood shelf becoming more expensive. If a conflict disrupts food exports or factories shut down halfway across the globe, those macroeconomic shockwaves quietly travel across shipping routes and increase household costs for everyone, everywhere. So that leads us to the crucial question that's probably staring us all right in the face. Will prices ever actually go down permanently? The short answer? Usually, no. Sure, some very specific items might temporarily fall in price, but overall, modern economies are actually designed intentionally around gradual inflation. Central banks typically aim for a target inflation rate, often around 2%, because moderate inflation encourages you to spend, to invest, and to grow businesses today. If you knew things would be significantly cheaper tomorrow because of a deflationary spiral, you'd wait to buy them, right? And if everyone waits, the entire global economy would just grind to a halt. But listen, you aren't powerless in this macroeconomic machine. Hedging against inflation really comes down to 3 active strategies you can start using today. First, build skills. Technology and economies are always going to change, but having highly valuable skills gives you the earning power to keep your nominal wages growing way faster than inflation. Second, understand money. The earlier you learn the mechanics of budgeting, saving, and investing, the less shocking inflation becomes because your money actually starts working for you and compounding over time. And third, spend consciously. Recognize those sneaky psychological triggers we just talked about and be highly intentional with where your cash goes. Because ultimately, the answer isn't one simple villain. It's an entire interconnected system. Rising prices aren't just spreadsheet anomalies or boring academic concepts. They actively change our lifestyles, our dreams, our daily stress levels, and the everyday choices we make. Understanding how this complex machine works, from global oil prices all the way down to your shrinking bag of chips, might just be one of the absolutely most important life skills that nobody formally teaches us. The system won't stop moving. Gradual inflation is baked right into the very design of our global economy. But you absolutely have control over your own financial choices and habits. Knowing exactly how hard companies fight for your attention every single second, and knowing how the value of your cash is constantly shifting, will you pause before you click buy now next time? Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating system today, and I really hope this helps you navigate the macroeconomic world of prices with just a little more clarity.